Anyone else craving a handmade donut right now? Just made. And now let's welcome the delightful Anna Storti.
When I was in high school, I was all about basketball. I was starting point guard, I won MVP, and defense was my specialty. There were numerous occasions when I would steal the ball from the other team, dribble down the court, and make an uncontested layup, and the crowd would go wild. And by crowd, I mean my mom, who's this really petite, 5'2" Filipina, who would be the only person in the audience standing and screaming at the top of her lungs, "Go, Anna! Hustle!" That's my mom. And next to her, sitting down and quiet, would be my dad, who's this really calm, cool, and collected Italian-American who'd always be wearing blue jeans and a white t-shirt. And while he was always a little embarrassed to be next to my mom, I don't know why, he was always really proud of his defensive-minded daughter. And in fact, both my parents are always really proud and supportive of my decision to play basketball. I had been playing since I was 7. And even when I decided to retire the jersey and focus on my studies in college, they were still really supportive. And while basketball was no longer an everyday aspect of my life, defense still played a really prominent role. And the first instance was when I came out. My dad was actually really supportive. According to him, he knows how guys are. So he was really happy that his daughter was going to avoid all of that trouble. I expressed my gratitude, but I quickly reminded him that it's not like women don't have trouble. My conservative and Catholic mother, on the other hand, was not supportive at all. And it only got more difficult for me when I told them that I was going to switch from being a civil engineer major to an ethnic and women's studies major. Not only were they worried about job prospects, but I was kind of turning into that radical queer feminist that I'm sure a lot of parents would just love their daughter to turn into. So throughout college, I always really had to defend my passions in feminism and social justice until I got into Maryland's PhD program in women's studies, where the idea of their daughter turning into this professional feminist kind of began to grow on them. So flashback to last summer, the summer before I started grad school, my partner and I decided to spend 2 months in Europe having some fun before I signed my life away to grad school. And it was in these 2 months that I surprisingly began to embody aspects of this defensive high school me that I had thought retired years ago. And it was because of a particular form of street harassment that happened on 3 distinct occasions. And the first time was in Barcelona. We're walking down the street when a man is approaching us, stops about 10 feet in front of us, looks at me, a little perplexed, squats, squints, and says, "Hey, Gina!" And before I could do anything, he runs along, and I'm left feeling completely caught off guard, exposed, hurt, and I start tearing up. I was not at all prepared for someone hurling this racial slur at me, and in that moment, I made a pact with myself that the next time someone said anything like that to me again, I was gonna defend myself. I would watch my emotions and it wouldn't faze me. So we make it to Rome. It's hot, we're hungry, you don't want to mess with me when I'm hungry. And we're walking down this really busy restaurant aisle where waiters and waitresses are standing outside their respective restaurants reading the daily specials. One waiter decides to stop me in my tracks, put his hand on my shoulder, look at me up and down, and say, "Bella, you are the hottest Asian I have ever seen." And again, I was left stunned. I was not ready for this. I was not defending my emotions, and it really did get to me. And in Rome, and in my mind, I was like, Asian? But I'm Italian like you too. And at that point, that was it. I was frankly pissed. After Rome, I was on hyper-vigilant mode, ready for anyone to test me. In fact, my defensive mentality was on such a high that I punched a guy on a Paris metro. But that's a different story. We finally make our way to Amsterdam, home of one of the most famous red light districts. And at this point, this was a good 6 weeks into the 8-week trip, so I had had enough time to mentally prepare a thesis to expel into the next person that decided that street harassment was okay. It was dusk. He was on a corner, I was walking. We make eye contact. And before I could escape his vision, he decides to politely ask me, "Hey, bitch, you wanna be my geisha tonight?" I was ready for it. I was ready. I had mentally prepared a thesis. I was about to become a PhD student in women's studies, where I had the skills to articulate how misogynistic it is to interrupt women in public spaces and to verbally harass, objectify, and perpetuate hegemonic notions that women are submissive and readily available for consumption. Now, I want to say all of that and more, but in the moment, I calmly and collectedly stopped. I looked at him, and I eloquently stated, "Fuck you!" That was it. That's all I said. What kind of feminist does that make me if I continue to let all these catcallers off the hook? And what I realize now is that defense comes in lots of different shapes and sizes. While it would have been amazing to call out this catcaller, it's also important for me to defend and protect my own safety in those moments. Who knows what he would have said or done if I would have defended my thesis to him. All I know is that while I no longer play basketball, I still got some fire to my game. Except today, the game is women's studies.